European Ceramic Association. And then Graziano Verdi, I think he's going to join soon, who is president of the Ceramic Tiles branch and CEO of Italserv. So, Mr. President, I give you the floor.
Thank you, and a warm welcome also from my side to all of you present here, and especially those who listen in via call this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, I think when we look at Europe, when we look at our EU, and especially the Commission as such, we are at the crossroads. We are at the crossroads when it comes to industry and industry policy. Too long and too much has been said in recent years and in recent decades about industrial production in Europe, and not enough has been done to encourage and to make sure that we as industry stay competitive. Ladies and gentlemen, you've seen it in a lot of different areas of industry that investments and future developments are done outside Europe and not within the EU, because permitting is very long, regulations are very difficult to handle. Administrative burdens have been increasing over the last decades, and above all, the climate for investment in industries was not the best one. However, if you look at the ceramic industry, an industry that is led by a lot of European market and world market leaders when it comes to technology, when it comes to production output, when it comes to product innovation, we have still leading companies in Europe. Our industry invests in Europe, creates jobs in Europe. I've on one of my slides, if I may ask to put it on here, the importance of this industry. We can show you how many people are directly employed or indirectly work for the sector. A couple of 100,000 indirectly, more than 200,000 directly. We're an industry that is local, that is embedded in local communities. I take, for example, Belgium or the Netherlands. We are not in the big cities. We are out there where people have their jobs, where they go in the morning and come back in the afternoon, or work at nighttime in the night shift, where their families live. And so this is local value creation, ladies and gentlemen. This is not artificial intelligence. This is not some sort of discussion about some sort of service that you render somewhere out the world. We talk about the future of Europe when it comes to value creation. Keep in mind that the social welfare of this Europe has been created by industry. Politicians have not created one job. Industry has. And we need industry in Europe. We need world market leaders in Europe. And we as the ceramic industry are committed to stay in Europe, to invest in Europe, and to do our best to contribute to the welfare and the well-being of our citizens in Europe. But, and this is the biggest thing when we talk about this development of cost structure, it's not about numbers as such. It's not about analysis. I do understand that we need to do this these days, and we provide all necessary decision makers on the local, national, and European level with those analyses. What you know as well when you look at your own electricity bills that you have to pay every other month, that the bills have increased significantly for certain citizens in Europe. And for us as industry, dramatically as well. So the clear message is, if you want to have a transition from fossil energy to non-fossil one, you need to provide an infrastructure, and you need to provide especially the resources for this transformation, in the sense of enough energy to satisfy our demand when we produce our product. We are obviously an industry that can shift from fossil to non-fossil. That's not a problem for us. We can do it. We have made all the necessary steps in order to prepare ourselves for such a move. However, it is costly. We will finance it. We need obviously also certain subsidies to do so. On the other hand, we need the resources, and this means above all that there's enough electricity available throughout Europe. This is not the case, ladies and gentlemen. This is not the case. And by the way, it's not going to be the case in the next 5 years either. So what the European Commission especially needs to do is develop a transformation plan that ensures that industry has access to affordable energy, and in this case, electricity. We as industry strongly request that this transformation is supported by accessible energy in the form of affordable energy prices for us when it comes to electricity. Today, we have still prices that are outrageously expensive, and obviously what is also important, we don't even can get the energy to our industrial locations because they are in remote areas, as I said earlier, and they need a certain sort of capacity in the grid. And this is not provided today. The infrastructure for electricity is not in place in order to satisfy our local demand level. So even if we invest in our kilns in order to make them, to electrify them and provide them with the necessary burners, for example, we are not able to get the energy to these local places in order to do so. So all in all, we are lacking here a plan. We are lacking here the transition as such. And on top of it, the Commission and the member states are putting a lot of emphasis on further reducing our CO2 emission. Ladies and gentlemen, when we look at the ceramic industry as such, we are a very low emitter. A very low emitter because with all our installations, throughout Europe, we emit less than 5% of the whole emission in Europe. So actually, there are hundreds of locations around Europe that emit a very, very low amount of CO2. Nevertheless, our industry has invested heavily throughout the last decade in order to reduce energy consumption and therefore the emission of CO2 in the atmosphere, and will continue to do so. And we are committed, obviously, to go this way, but we need a clear transition phase. What you need for this is you need emergency measures in order to give us the opportunity to invest and guarantee that we can still produce competitively tomorrow. Ceramic products are used in a lot of fields. When you drink your cup of tea in the morning or a cup of coffee, tableware, that's ceramic. If you live in a house, very often the house is built of bricks or the house has roof tiles on it. In your bathrooms, you have the roof and the floor and wall tiles. So there you see it also. Other things you don't see in technical ceramics that might be in aeronautic and other applications, or as a major supplier to industries like the steel and cement industries when they need refractories in their kilns, for example, highly efficient. All this know-how is still in Europe. All this technology development is still in Europe. Product development. So this needs to be defended. And if we want to have a forward-looking industry strategy led by the Commission, they need to do something for us also. We have supplied them, and that's what I'm talking about, with a cumulative cost assessment to them so that they understand under how much pressure we are. I can show you this in a minute. I can lead you through the different slides, but I wanted your attention so that you understand what as an industry we are confronted with a lot of price pressure when it comes to our input costs. And obviously, today, when you talk about price pressure, then you talk about inflation. Then you talk about price increases when it comes to housing, to infrastructure, to all sorts of things. And this is due to the fact that especially the transformation in energy resources is taking place, or the Commission wants it to take place, and it's a very costly affair that you and us have to digest in when it comes to our performance. So this is, I think, the key message that I wanted to convey to you today. Industry is ready to move in this direction. Industry wants to invest in Europe and keep jobs in Europe, but we as an industry need measures that help us in order to transfer to this new reality in due time and course. And this is obviously a major issue when you look at our when we look at our cumulative cost assessment. I would kindly ask you if you can put on, I mean, from my perspective, the industry as such I've explained, and if you can probably show the chart where I have this on the usage of on the production, for example, the quantity output is number 3. If I can jump to this, yeah. Here you see, obviously, over more than a decade, the production that has declined. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, if we take, for example, today, the world market of refractories or of wall and floor tiles, more and more pressure comes from countries like India and China, also for the European market. So imports are there. So this is something where we need to act fast. The world is not sleeping around us. The world is not standing still around us. We Europeans, we cannot just create walls around us or stay inactive. No, we need to take actions now. And this now is so important because some people still think that electricity comes out of the wall. It does not. It's not out of the plug here. It's actually to be produced. And therefore, we need, obviously, here competitive prices. As I said, from my perspective, when we look at the CO2 as such, and the smaller emitters that we have, and let's go to this, I think, to this chart here. Yeah. When we look at our structure of the industry, there are many small plants that need investment throughout the sector. So there needs to be, for these SMEs, as we call them, the financial support, long-term planning, because as you can imagine, one side business cannot afford to make these huge investments without a planning perspective that goes longer than 10 years or so. So they need to be planned, prepared, etc. So often, and I think this transition needs to take place in a structured way, because otherwise everybody tries to do it at the same time. It gets too expensive, and sometimes also you jeopardize the whole the industry with such effects. Permitting in the EU is not an easy target either, because obviously these permitting processes take longer than 1 year, up to 2 years, so it needs to be prepared well. So when we look at the 2030, and this is the next one, yes, energy resources that are available around Europe need to be really available. We are talking a lot about other alternatives. I make reference, we are today in Brussels, and Belgium and the Netherlands have the most exposure in this region of the world to hydrogen, for example. However, nothing has been done so far. I can say from a personal experience, because we run plants also in the UK. And actually already in the UK, there have been movements towards this energy resource, because the government actually grants us access to hydrogen and for a competitive price. They guarantee the price for the next 10 years to be the same price as natural gas. And that's why obviously an industry then can easily shift to this. Whereas in countries like the Netherlands and in Belgium, we have not yet such possibility. So I think here again, we need an approach that is much more industry friendly, that is much more long-term perspective oriented, and not just a discussion. You know, it's not good enough if we say sorry, we cut off the grid, all the nuclear power that we have, and then we install some gas central stations and burn the gas for electricity. This is probably not the way forward that governments should choose. Yeah, this is something short-sighted, costly, not very efficient. When I see the risk that an industry faces like ours, that from a perspective of the ETS scheme, we got allocations in the past that were regularly reduced, and we were incentivized to put investment into our operations in order to reduce such CO2 emissions. That was the right way forward because it was a step-by-step approach. Next year, we face obviously a dramatic one because it's a completely new situation where the reduction of these CO2 emission rights that are allocated is dramatic. So not only we have to deal with the high cost inflation when it comes to energy, but we have to deal also with an ETS right that is very expensive. So again here, a very difficult situation, especially for SMEs who have not access to a financial market when it comes to buying ETS certificates. And this market is a very closed one and a very, I would call it, determined by some big players as a market and not a very free one to exit and to enter and to use for a company. So here, these are aspects that we need to keep in mind when we talk about the industry and its cost structure. Obviously, on the other front, we have a multitude of different regulations that come our way or have been coming our way already in the past. I mentioned only a few. Draft regulations, that's the best available technology, and here also upgrades that are required. So also, again, investments that the industry has to make. Also from a packaging perspective, also other sort of bureaucracy that comes our way, which increases our cost structure. You might say these things are good for the consumer. You might say this is bringing the industry forward. In some aspects, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, it does not. It's just additional cost burden that the industry has to digest, and at the end of the day, the final consumer and the buyer and user of our products has to assume. So again, when you talk about cost inflation, it's coming very strongly from these aspects, regulatory aspect and the energy aspect. Let me summarize. When we look at the overall ceramic competitiveness that is at risk, we talk here about the 30 to 40% increase on costs when the industry faces all these aspects that I've tried to mention very briefly to you. And obviously, this puts us in a very, very difficult market position when we talk about competitiveness internationally speaking, especially towards colleagues from outside the EU that are not required to have this cost structure and can easier access the marketplace. On top of it, I think it's important to say two more things. We don't have a common market, by the way, within the EU. We have no energy market that is common because energy prices are very different and very highly among member states. We have very different cost structures when it comes to energy from Spain to Italy, but also from Germany to France, for example. Very big differences, which represent nothing else than a distortion of competition. So again, we are not even able to manage it internally within the EU, but on top of it, we have this major disadvantage when we talk on the world market with respect to our price and cost structure. So again, you see how difficult it is for us to remain competitive. And I told you at the beginning, world-leading companies based in Europe, innovation in Europe, jobs in Europe. But this is for how long if you don't assist or help in this way the industry. In the following chart, number 10, I show you very briefly how the gas prices, for example, have evolved in this period of time between 19 and 30, or will be evolving more or less, and the same goes for electricity. So you see that the switch to electricity has an important impact for us and is by no means today economical viable project to do for an industry. That's, again, a strong message from us as an industry that we need to better manage this transfer. If I don't go into even details how much energy costs you in the United States or in other parts of the world, because it's ridiculously low compared to the prices we as industry have to pay here in Europe. But you will find it in my analysis here, one of the charts. So when we look at the industry as such and what we will incur as costs, additional costs for the years to come, let's take 2030 as a reference year. It's about 74% in gas, 81% in electricity. And if you take the cost inflation coming from CO2 emissions, and this doesn't include any hikes in the market, but just what we assume as I think it's 200 tons, 200 euros a ton that we have put here as a reference, it's 550%. So you see a major cost inflation for the industry to incur. And this is, at the end of the day, when you look at it, such a price that we have to pay in, that will increase our cost structure by 30 to 40% when it comes to the overall cost. That is enormous. That is a very high impact, and remaining competitive, the world market with such a cost pressure is really a real big challenge. That, in a summary, and if I may sort of summarize the whole presentation in one word, we need urgently emergency measures and the revised structure of the ETS scheme from the Commission, and not long discussions. We need actions, short-term actions. That means in the next couple of months, in order to address it and to give us the opportunity to shift and transform our industry in a very structured, planned, and forward-looking way. Ladies and gentlemen, it's I think when we have a dream, and Europe can be about dreams, I have no problem. You call them dreams or vision. And a CO2 neutral economy, CO2 neutral industry is a dream, can be a vision, but it needs time, it needs thorough preparation, and it needs common sense. You cannot press a button and say tomorrow we are there. You need to prepare it. It's a costly affair, and somebody needs to pay for it. And I strongly emphasize the potential negative effect on our industry. And by the way, not only the ceramic industry, a lot of industries throughout Europe that suffer the same. And at the end of the day, we lose not thousands of jobs, not hundreds of thousands of jobs, but millions of jobs that will be lost in Europe. And above all, which is taking place and which continues to intensify, that we lose know-how. Yeah. And by the way, I am certainly not from the generation that says I want to be somebody that sees Europe only as a tourist center for people to come here to see the Grand Place and that's it, and or some other nice building in Italy or in Austria and that's it. No, I would like to come people to here because we have leading companies here with really top-notch technology, and we could contribute as an industry so much worldwide. This morning, I had a long discussion with Commissioner Séjourné. Yeah, and I said to him also, from a positive angle, let's not talk negative. The potential that we have due to our technologies, due to our products, to bring it to the world. You know, we are by nature people that work with others, the Europeans. So why not making the step forward and helping them to improve their industries? But being positive means to think ahead and plan something, not just to say now, because we have a Green Deal, we need to change everything. It's a major risk, and I hope I made it clear to you that the industry as such, is doing its best. Believe me, as a representative, and there's some other colleagues sitting with me here today, to be successful and to survive in the European Union today means that you can be successful everywhere, because with this administrative burden and this cost structure to make money, it's already a huge success within Europe. So again, from my side, we are committed to all these vision and dreams, but we need the time and to need the support of not only the Commission, by the way, we need it from the Parliament, also we need it from the Member States in order to help us to move in this direction. And energy is obviously one of the big factors to be successful as an industry. So thank you very much for attention. Sorry, I borrowed a little bit of time, but I waited till my good friend Graziano comes. See you. I hand over to you, whoever wants to start.
It's difficult to start after your conclusion. If you want to.
Yeah, I take over. Yeah, thank you, Heimo. I have the privilege to present, one of the branches of ceramic industry that is not always in the spotlight. In contrary, I'm representing the refractory industry, and we are those guys, who produce the protective layer between the equipment and the high temperatures in the high temperature processes, be it production of cement, glass, steel, etc. So we help the essential industries perform. We help that they can produce their products, every day, and in that sense, we are obviously supporting, the bigger industries in Europe. Now we've seen that, and Heimo has pointed that out. The sharp decrease in production. What did we say? 30% since 2021. Within the refractory industry, you see a very similar trend that goes down, and this is obviously a sign that something goes wrong. I mean, that's and I'm just trying to point out a few aspects of what's going wrong, and for me, and if I look at our industry and our company, the main point is that we are not having a level playing field. That's the main thing. So we still consider ourselves as highly innovative. We are at technological wise, in Europe, we are certainly at the forefront with regard to refractory technology, but we have a steep uphill climb or battle if we talk about the playing field we're on. And Heimo pointed that out. Then there are certain multitude of aspects. Energy prices are one, but then what also being pointed out, the access to good or green energy will be a major issue for us in the future. Now I'm representing a German company, and if you look at the hydrogen grid, for example, that Germany plans, and then we plot the refractory plants on the same map, then you see that those plants are far away from those grid lines. And even if we were close, we are somewhere in the row or in the position 34 if it comes then to the allocation of this energy. So there's no reasonable assumption that we will have access soon to this green energy, which is obviously a problem if you want to decarbonize our industry, which we are obviously committed because we see the importance of it. So energy pricing but also access to this energy will be of high importance, and we don't see actually a realistic way in a reasonable time frame if we continue like we do. Then Heimo also pointed out the overregulation, which it's really slowing us down. It's slowing us down and costs us a lot of money, and this is a competitive disadvantage. And we think it could be done leaner without neglecting all the needs that we obviously have as a community, as we have as a society, if it comes then to the regulation part. And then there are certain things, you know, that are still looming at the horizon. We thought that, or we saw that our assessment predicts a price increase of 30 to 40%. And this is also connected, you know, to the CO2 pricing, to the reduction of the free allocation of CO2 certificates, which is faster than what we can see the development of green energy, or also other corresponding technologies that we will apply to reduce our CO2 footprint. So this is not matching the speed of this progress. And for example, another, you know, to quote a popular abbreviation, CBAM is also looming at the horizon, which is for us as an industry. Our industry is highly export oriented, you know, so that let's say in our case of our company, we are exporting more than 60% of what we produce outside of the European Union. You know, we need desperately a good solution for exporting industries. And right now, as the mechanism is set up, this is not the case. So there are certain aspects, you know, that are looming at the horizon that we are not very keen on. But you know, that's why I want to reiterate, you know, what Heimo said. You know, we need the support now, and we need it desperately. Not in the sense that we want to stay innovative. We want to stay, you know, in Europe, and for this we need to have the framework that we can be successful or continue to be successful. And that's just to reiterate and support what Heimo said before. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Tatjana.
Yes, I think that after what my colleagues told you, I think that the risk to be very boring, and especially after the conclusion of Mr. Short, because I think that we are a little bit discussing the future of the industry in Europe, and worried because I don't perceive till now the right sensitivity to the problems. I have just had a meeting with Mr. Fitto, the Vice President of the European Commission, and I was with my colleagues of Conferenza. So sorry for the delay. I apologize, but it was important to be there and to try to express completely the problem we have. Incredible things that is happening, and I think my colleagues will agree, is that the ceramic industry in Europe is the most advanced in terms of sustainability. We are the best, and it's true by many tests that has been done by different universities and laboratories. And we are penalizing our industry without thinking what we are doing. Because today, and I think with the price of the gas of today, we probably, ETS are already over 18% on top of the energy cost that in Europe, as you know, is the highest cost we have. I don't want to speak about US or other country, China, where the energy cost is between 2 times or 3 times less. But now we are really out of the world now. On top of this, we have the problem that the ceramic is produced in countries like India, where there is no now respect for the labor. Most of the production is done with carbon, and the emissions are between 7 to 8 times higher than the one of our countries. So I think that now is really time to wake up the European Commission and to try to take some decision in the right direction. I don't want to take you more time, and then we'll have the first time for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you. If you have any questions, I think, please.
We can start with the floor and then we move to people online.
Yeah.
Frédéric Simon, please.
Yes, Frédéric Simon from Carbon Pulse. We're media specialized on TS essentially. So I understand from what you just said is that there's an emergency, something needs to be done quickly. There is no immediate solution that can be found, it seems, on energy prices. So what can actually give you that relief that you're asking for? You mentioned TS in several cases. Are you asking for an exemption or temporary exemption, or what is?
If I may start, and please, my colleagues, come in when you want. I think there are two things to be said to your question, Frederick. If I look around Europe, member states are already discussing certain special tariffs on electricity prices for the industry. Yeah. So basically, you might call it subsidized prices or reduced prices that industry pays for electricity. This would help, obviously, locally. But again, it's not a European approach, it's a national approach that people are talking about. The Austrian government has passed a law on this. The Germans are discussing it or are at an advanced stage. Some others have already followed or will follow. Belgium, yeah, they're trying to do that. Yeah. So here there's initiatives there. The Commission is, I think, what you have heard from Graziano, from Christian and myself, too slow. We know this problem for quite a while. It's not new, but they are actually not really responding to it proactively. The second one, when you talk about the ETS as such, I think we are now in a phase where, first of all, I alluded to the fact that a lot of our members in the industries, I call them small emitters. Yeah, they are actually emitting far below 50,000 tons CO2 a year. So if you would basically increase the threshold from the existing 25,000 to the 50,000, and then basically say all of them are exempted from the ETS, that would be very helpful. But actually, it doesn't mean that they fall automatically out of any scheme, because you have the possibility under the ETS laws, even regulations in Europe, that the local, meaning the member state, the national, tax them, for example, for CO2. Yeah, that's an appropriate system that could be applied. Why I say this, the burden, the administrative burden for ETS, and especially the unpredictability on the price of CO2 emissions for small emitters, SMEs, is very high. And there you would help them tremendously short term. A revision of this sort of regulation is doable. It needs only basically the Commission to decide it. They don't even have to go to the Parliament. They can decide it. Now they need to be in agreement, the collège of the commissaire, as they call them. Obviously, they are not always in agreement, but this could be an emergency measure that we require, for example. Move quick in action and do something about it. These are two things that I can mention to you. Yeah. On a longer term perspective, obviously, pricing of, as I said, renewable energy is a big topic and needs to be viewed on a European basis, because otherwise you have a distortion of competition throughout the Europe. That's tremendous. Yeah. And at the end of the day, you will have the production of energy, especially talking about electricity, that is local. It will always remain local, but the market is European. And therefore, you need the grid, and therefore you need a pricing that is European. So this is something the Commission needs to come up with.
If I may just a quick follow-up on the ETS, there's ETS2, which is applying as of 2028 to cover small industries. So you're asking this threshold to apply also for ETS2,
yes,
correct?
Correct.
And there is a proposal there to amend ETS2, which is due in the coming weeks. Even on the table right now.
So we don't want to be in ETS2. There's even more uncertainty about the ETS2. So no, we want to stay in ETS1, but Article 27 of the ETS says that in life, and we think it should be below 25, and it should be below 50,000 tons, can opt out, but they, legally speaking, stay in ETS1, but they meet their obligations according to national equivalent schemes, which are less administratively burdensome. And there are already existing schemes in Italy, Spain, Croatia, and some other countries, but not enough, We can provide you all the details about these aspects. But if you do that, you simplify the life of 70% of the installations in the ETS, but concerning only 5% of the CO2 emissions. So it's a big simplification, but they have to meet exactly the same obligations. In Italy, many installations are in the scheme. They meet the decarbonization obligation, but it's in ETS1, not ETS2.
I would like just to make two little points on this aspect that maybe could be interesting you. The ETS system worldwide is normally between 1/3 and 1/4 of what is applied to Europe when is applied. India, for example, doesn't have. Second aspect, when we spoke about emission could be something that could be important for us, for our kids, for ourselves. Ceramic industry doesn't have problem of emission. Sassuolo, that is the center of the ceramic of Italy, proved just last year that in terms of emission, we are better than the center of Modena or Reggio Emilia, the two nearest cities, because we have the filter in the ceramics. Here we are speaking about ETS connecting to the CO2, but the CO2 is going to the air. So if the world entire stop to buy ceramics, would be a good ratio, the one of the European Commission. But considering that the ceramic will continue to be produced, if it's produced on the other countries where the emissions are 3-4 times higher than the one that we produce here, we are just killing ourselves. Sorry. I think it's important that we survive in this message, otherwise we're running around.
The final sort of suggestion I could sort of make here in this round is obviously you freeze the allocations currently and don't further reduce it next year. You give us the option as a transition phase, which would help the industry dramatically. Yeah. And this is not by no means a big issue because we are so small emitters. It's nothing that we will give away. We can always reduce in the future more. But as I said, from a transition perspective, the next year will be critical. Yeah.
And so I understand you've spoken to Mr. Séjourné and others in the Commission. Are they receptive?
I would say, I say this, I'm always considered as a very critical. But after these discussions today and last week, I see a change in attitude towards us, meaning they understand that the industry has concerns. They want to keep us in Europe. They want to support us. I think they are suffering or they are struggling with their own structures. Yeah, meaning the complexity of Europe. Yeah, and there would be a major breakthrough. When all of us talk about emergency measures, it would be a major breakthrough if they really act now, because this would show that there's commitment from the European institutions towards industry. But yes, I see a change.
If I can add to the request to freeze the decrease in 3 quotas next year, it is a very important request because for the time being, the plan is to increase our cost by 30%. So as Carbon probably knows, the benchmark reduction that is proposed by the Commission today is minus 50% of the fuel benchmark. So that means compared to 2013. And it means on average for all our installations, it will mean plus 30% of carbon cost in 2026, at a time where we pay too much in energy and cannot compete internationally. So it's the opposite to what we need in the short term.
And there is no green energy. So it only leads to inflation without any result of.
Yeah. Are there any further questions from?
We can check online if there is any question. We have to leave very soon to go to the European Policy Ceramics Forum in the Parliament.
Can I, because we have a couple of minutes, I think it's probably interesting for the audience just to throw the charts on housing, because I think that's also something we spoke with with the commissioner, the Danish commissioner Jørgensen, about housing and energy as well. So from our aspect, what we did is, as members of the industry, working together with a lot of decision makers, and you know that the housing as such is a big topic. So we basically, if I can show you the three charts very quickly. What we suggested to them is to focus on three target groups throughout the EU. Not at everything, but three target groups. The first one, you start with a young generation. It's appalling actually, and it's a shame that we are not doing enough for our young generations, that they have no student homes. It's very expensive for them to live and to finance. We all go through this, or all went through it. So it would be easy for the Commission to set here clear targets together with the member states in order to cut this shortage and create the necessary student homes that we need. The second one, we have an aging population. People get older, are poor also, and need help in the sense of medical care or other care. So you need to put them next to these centers, next to the availability of medical help and assistance. So different sort of housing is needed there. And the third one is the social housing for people who really need housing, and therefore you need to build it. So if the Commission, no regulation is required, no additional laws are required, but if they just put emphasis on those and make it transparent how much or how many units the single states build and share best practice throughout the EU with respect to the construction long-term, more than 100 years, obviously, with quality products, as Graziano said, because we are a sustainable industry. This approach, which we call the 3S approach, student, senior, and social, would be a very good one for the Commission to put emphasis, because it helps the population that is the hardest hit by the current circumstances in the marketplace. So here they could make really a difference, politically speaking, and also when you talk about the future of this continent, attracting young people to this continent, helping them in their studies, and obviously also our responsibility confront of the older aging population and the social one. So here, a very pragmatic approach that would help tremendously, I think, in the housing market. And it doesn't need, again, a lot of things. Can I have the last slide, please? Here, I think it's important. When I say here on this slide, it would have an enormous impact on economy, because building these units will require craftspeople, will require installers, people who work on these sites will also need money. And there we come to the final aspect of my sort of thinking, is that you could attract a lot of private money from the private sector into this, because you could either give them tax breaks when they invest in student, senior homes or social housing, and give them the opportunity here to do something good at the same time for the population. Last but not least, you can also use public land that is available, real estate, for cheaper rates, because the states can put the permitting in place rather quickly and convert this for social housing or student homes also very quickly. So there's a lot to be done here, best practice to be shared, and a very pragmatic approach for helping the people in Europe through such a plan. So we've proposed it last week to the Commission. We'll see what comes out of it. So you see, we are a constructive part of the European economy. Thank you very much for your attention. I think we need to run to the Parliament.
And yes, we have some
the members of Parliament that we should be there tomorrow.
Yes, Prima will be there as well, digital.
Lovely.
And the president of the region of Emilia-Romagna.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we have paper copies of the executive summary and on the press release, and we'll also send it to you by email, but you can collect a copy here if you want. So we thank all the journalists who are online. You will also receive these copies. Thank you very much. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.